In today's show, the Jrue Holiday trade is finally official, except with a little amendment. The Blazers still got work to do this offseason, though. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we'll talk about the Jrue Holiday trade, officially official, except with a slight amendment from how it was initially reported. A little bit of a foreboding amendment in my personal opinion, but that will remain to be seen into the future. Plus, we'll talk about where the Blazers stands now that Jrue is on the roster, and I want to talk a little bit about mentorship. The Blazers added a 35-year-old who they've committed to pay for, or is at least under contract for up to 3 more seasons. What does mentorship even mean, and is that a role that you can just naturally step into by virtue of age? Plus, we'll talk about what the Blazers are going to do now because they have 13 roster spots filled. They have to fill at least one more before the regular season, and they have room to do so if they should choose, although I would not recommend holding your breath because I bet they will be slow and meticulous about making these moves as the final actions of summer trickle out. The offseason slowly trickles forward. We've reached the trickle portion of the offseason. Okay, let's get into the Jrue trade. It is officially official. The Blazers announced it. He's in Portland. Anthony Simons heads to Boston. But it's not with the package that had been initially reported prior to the NBA draft. At the time of the initial reporting, the Blazers were also including 2 second-round picks, a 2030 pick from the Knicks and a 2031 pick that belonged to the Blazers, sending them to Boston as well. And there was a little bit of hemming and hawing in the sort of like trade grade space about why are the Blazers the ones sending picks? And while I do think that is like a reasonable question to ask, in general, I wasn't going to worry too much about deep out second round picks, although I did think it was notable that the Blazers were indeed the team sending picks in that particular trade because it just saved Boston so much dang money. And when you save someone so much dang money, you should get the benefit, right? But in the general, I wasn't too hung up on that. But those picks aren't going anywhere. Blazers are holding on to them, as reported by Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian. And I quote, according to the source, a recent review of Holiday's medicals revealed nothing substantial enough to warrant the trade being negated. However, there was enough there to lead the Blazers to alter the terms of the deal slightly. And that alteration is not including those 2 picks. It is just a straight up player for player trade as announced by the Blazers on Monday afternoon. You're listening to Tuesday, July 8th show. Welcome. Yeah, that's a little ominous, quite frankly. Jrue Holiday missed 20 games last year with a variety of ailments. Most notably was a right shoulder impingement, but he also dealt with a pinky injury that kept him out of a little bit of time. And then in the postseason, he dealt with a hamstring injury that kept him out of some games and limited him as Boston's season came to an end. I will say this. We don't really know from the outside what nothing substantial enough to warrant the trade being negated means. But if the Blazers got Jrue Holiday's medicals and they said, hey, hold up, we want to pay less, that can't be a good thing, right? I think it might be a thing that doesn't come up. It might be a thing that doesn't come up, but I would say a little bit foreboding when trading for a 35-year-old with $100 million owed to him over the next 3 seasons, including $37 million after in his age 37 season. That's that doesn't feel great. I would say that makes you a little more worried about Jrue Holiday's health. It's like I said, we don't know, but that makes you feel a little bit worried about Jrue Holiday's like sort of like general health, considering he had so many different body ailments. But I think particularly the hamstring and the shoulder stuff was the stuff that was lingering, that like kept him out of significant games last year. Although it could be anything, right? It could be anything. The other thing to note here, I mentioned the second round picks. There was a brief period when it felt like the Blazers were going to be a little light on second round picks. It's like, that's curious. They don't have many seconds to trade. And I think two things about this. Well, let me hold on. But because they didn't send out these 2 picks in the Boston deal, and because after this was announced, they got picks back when they traded back on draft night to get Yang Han Sen, they actually are fine. They've sort of rekindled the stock a little bit, restocked the shelves. They maybe have a pick in 2026. It's owed to them from Memphis, but the Grizzlies basically have to make the playoffs for it to convey based on the way it's protected in the second round. It's like it has to land between 43 and 60. So the Blazers they need Memphis to make, to be good enough for that second round pick to be bad, basically, in order to get it. But I think like there's a sweet spot where the Grizzlies barely miss the playoffs and give the Blazers like the 44th pick in the draft. That's money, 45th pick in the draft. But they have 3 picks in 2027. They got 2 in 2028. They're going to get 1 in 2029. They've got their own in 2030 and 2032. They've got this Knicks pick in 2030. Like they're fine. And second round picks aren't like deeply meaningful, right? Like I said, like I wasn't going to sweat too much over the Blazers giving out picks in the Holiday deal as initially reported, although I did think it was like kind of notably funny that they were the team adding sweeteners to that particular pot. Like second round picks are just they're very unlikely to yield impact players, right? Like any pick after like 20, you're fairly unlikely to find an NBA player. That's just the cold truth of the draft. Certainly there are exceptions, and some of you are like thinking up the exceptions right now in your head, and I like congratulate you on remembering Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and Derek White. Like you're good. But like the sort of colder reality, if you look at the history of drafts, both recent and historic, is just like second round picks are very unlikely to yield impact players, but they're also extremely important for a team like the Blazers, because they probably have to get something like a second round pick really right, because their path forward is almost certainly dictated by winning the margins. Like if they're going to be a good team into the future, they got to win on the margins. So like you don't want to just like punt away all of your second round picks because who cares and it doesn't matter. Although like I do think in general, any random second round pick is fairly unlikely to be an impact NBA player. But like the Blazers just like from where they are now, right, is like a team with like a bunch of interesting young players, but not like a top tier guy, and like kind of still on the outside of the playoffs, hoping that their young players develop. Having your stock of second round picks in the future is both helpful for juicing trades should you need it, and also just because like you're going to want to get one of these, you're going to want to find another Toumani Camara at some point. Like that's their path to being really good, is like truly nailing the 51st pick in the draft. I believe Toumani was 52. Like truly nailing one of those and finding a really cheap, really good player as you're kind of ascending, and have that player turn into Nikola Jokic and be the best player in the history of the franchise. Jrue Holiday, no second round picks in his deal. But the other thing I'm thinking about here with Jrue is like, he's the oldest player on the roster. He is the most experienced player on the roster. He's a 2-time champion. He is decorated. He is experienced. He's played in a bunch of different cities. He's someone who has found his way in the league, made all-star teams, won championships, helped the last 2 teams he's joined win at a very high level in Milwaukee and Boston. In fact, the recent history of the Jrue Holiday experience says if you trade for him, you immediately win the championship. Congratulations to the Trailblazers. But I think the Blazers have been missing like a true veteran leader, and I think people want to point to Jrue Holiday because of his age, like literally because of his birth date, that he will just be that. And I want to talk about that a little bit in the second segment, because I think there's more to it than just like been around a while. Although I do think been around a while is incredibly important. Join me in that second segment. We'll talk a little about mentorship in the league. Before we do that, though, let's talk FanDuel. We've got summer sports all summer long. You're about to get NBA Summer League, but you got baseball under the lights, you got golf on the green, you got high-stakes footy action with soccer all over the globe, and FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. So if you're a sports enthusiast listening to a Trailblazers podcast in the middle of July, you're probably already following the action of some sports, and FanDuel allows you to get in on the game that you're already on the couch viewing. You can track your favorite matchups. Plus, the app has daily promotions, which gives you, fun little ways to make wagers should you so choose. Plus, it's super clean, super easy to use app, and when you win, you get fast payouts. And it is a way to add a new wrinkle to your otherwise viewing experience. If you're someone who's already going to have the TV on, FanDuel adds another layer, whether you're placing a same game parlay or watching your bet ride out deep into the ninth inning. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 this summer and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. So Jrue Holiday is indeed the Blazers' elder statesman. But he's also good. And I think one of the sort of prevailing ideas with Jrue Holiday is that he will provide mentorship. And I don't think he won't. This is not a segment where I say I'm going to actually Jrue Holiday's leadership skills. But I would like to add a little bit of nuance to that idea. I think some layers and some texture to that idea, because it isn't in the very basic sense, Jrue Holiday was brought to the Portland Trailblazers to play basketball. The most helpful stuff he will do is likely being a quality basketball player who fits into what they want to do on the court in a much easier and more seamless way than Anthony Simons' particular skill set, right? Jrue has been better than Anthony Simons for all of Ant's career, right? But at some point, the age gap is they'll pass in the night, right? The ships will pass in the night because Holiday has gotten older. The Blazers are betting that that's not right away. They're betting that he has serviceable years. They're betting that a player who was really good even as recently as 2 seasons ago can get healthy, get right, and be really useful. And Holiday is a better complement next to Scoot Henderson because of the defense and off-ball shooting, and it doesn't need to be on the ball as much. He's a better complement next to Shaedon Sharpe because of the defense and the off-ball shooting. Doesn't need to be on the ball as much, but can also play a little bit of point guard as needed. He's not an elite playmaker. I don't even think he's a point guard, really. He's a true combo guard. But he can play. He can toggle both guard spots. He can play on and off the ball. He fits the Blazers' identity of wanting to guard and be a high-level defensive team, which is kind of the secret to their sauce when they were successful at the end of last season, is that they were a very good defensive team, and Jrue kind of fits that, right? The reason that they acquired him is for basketball. But there is a world in which he is a perfect mentor for Scoot Henderson. There is a world when he is this great, where he is the guy who teaches Scoot the ropes, and the guy who instills a sort of quiet intensity in Sharpe, because Jrue has that quiet intensity. He's not a screamer, not a yeller. He's not one of those guys. He is someone who brings it every night with a sort of a much quieter demeanor. Perhaps Sharpe can pick up on that. But what I want to push back against is that older player automatically equals mentor. Older player automatically equals leader. That's not how it works, quite frankly. Some players just aren't that. And I've been critical of the Blazers in the past, and particularly Joe Cronin in this case, of missing sort of the soft art of roster building. Building a team last year, particularly, that didn't have the institutional knowledge of sort of an older type of player that had been around the league and was that sort of whisperer in the locker room, and using maybe the back half of the roster for deeper dart throws than it doesn't have to be a Udonis Haslem type, but I've likened it to the Chris Kaman of the past, of the post LaMarcus Aldridge era, where he didn't really play very much, but he kind of kept people in check, taught them, there was a story about Chris Kaman kind of teaching guys at the end of the year that you tip out all the folks who work in the locker room, because we make millions of dollars, and if you give them, a couple $1,000s, it changes their life, right? Because like these dudes are working hard and just not making that type of money. That type of institutional knowledge, like what it means to be a pro. And that's not particularly important. That doesn't like make you a better basketball player, but it does teach you about professionalism. It does teach you about how to carry yourself. There is some value there. And the phrase I've used a bunch in describing the Blazers roster and sort of in my criticism of it, particularly last season, is that they lacked an emotional core. It wasn't that Jeremy Grant wasn't a 30-year-old adult. It's that he's just not the rah-rah leader type, right? He might be set a good example. He might be well-liked, but he is not someone who provides that sort of emotional core, the sort of the voice both that speaks to the media when stuff goes wrong, which is like increasingly less important, but also like is a tone setter in the locker room and on the court. He's just not wired that way. Anthony Simons is not wired that way. He took steps to become a better leader, become more vocal, but they were always trying to ask for it, get it out of him, like try to coax out more of that from Simons. And DeAndre Ayton's just not that. It's not the type of personality he has. He can be loud and boisterous, gregarious, and all of those things, but he's not that sort of like centering emotional leader. When the boat gets rocky, look to DA to guide you through choppy waters. Like it's just not. He's absolutely not that person. And they're missing that. Jrue Holiday might be exactly that, right? Because of the championship pedigree, because he's played in multiple teams and had to learn to fit in and adapt. And I think there's a skill in being adaptive and figuring out, okay, here's what I'm really good at. Here's how I'm going to help type of thing, right? I think all of those things are possible for Jrue. But what I'm pushing back here specifically is that because he has been around the block and because he is older and because he has been adaptable, that does not automatically equal mentor, because mentor has a bit of an implication that you're going to play a little bit less and you're going to do a little bit less. And Jrue Holiday may eventually transition to that. And I think one of the benefits of trading Anthony Simons out and bringing Jrue Holiday in is that it's easier, just sort of like political and relationship wise, to slowly transition Jrue Holiday, or perhaps quickly transition Jrue Holiday, but I would guess slowly transition Jrue Holiday to more of a reserve role, to a guy who is playing behind the young guards. But if the young guards struggle, don't be surprised if Jrue Holiday plays more than them. That's just kind of the nature of the way this team has operated over the last couple years. If Anthony Simons was still around, it is a much harder thing to say 26-year-old Anthony Simons entering your physical prime, who we've, committed to and given a fat contract to in the past and may still be doing it in the future if he's still on the roster, right? Like, move you go sit behind Shaedon Sharpe, right? That is a harder thing to ask. I think it's simpler with Jrue. In fact, in my conversation with Anthony Simons, I think he at points sort of resented the idea that Scoot Henderson was the like point guard of the future and he was this elder statesman at age 26. I got the sense talking to Anthony Simons a couple times that it was like, what? I'm not old. Like, what? Why am I being treated like this? Why are people asking me like what sagely advice I offer Scoot Henderson? I'm a young basketball player, right? Like, but I think it's easier with Jrue it's a more natural fit. So I do think there are a lot of indicators that Jrue could be a mentor. But what I want to push back against is the automatic acceptance of that role and the idea that NBA players are comfortable taking back seats and don't want to play, particularly in new situations where the young players behind them are not established. It is a very different thing. I think one of the interesting tests for Jrue and for the Blazers and for the coaching staff is how they handle his playing time. He doesn't have to play 35 minutes. In fact, I bet he plays like 30 minutes a game, 29 to 30 minutes a game, right? I don't think they're going to run him out for a cajillion minutes. That's not really the question, right? I don't think if there's 96 guard minutes to be had, I think between Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, and Jrue Holiday, there's not really a controversy in terms of total number of minutes available. Obviously, they're going to have to plug in some other guys there at some point, and figuring out where Matisse Thybulle fits in the rotation if he does early in the season when everybody's healthy, assuming everyone's healthy. But so I'm not worried about minutes necessarily. What I'm worried about is closing time, closing minutes, closing opportunities, comfort in the role. And if Jrue is sort of like, hey, I'm just still way better than these dudes, and I am, 80 games removed from being an all-defense guard, put me in the damn game and I deserve to play. You can't fault him for that. And that is an attitude of a competitor. That is not necessarily the perfect mentor type. So while Jrue could be, he has a lot of indicators that he could be. And hopefully the Blazers, in addition of Jrue Holiday, you find that sort of, it is the soft art of team building that they've sort of neglected last season. And he could be some sort of emotional core. Although my sense is that Jrue Holiday is certainly not that type of personality. So we will see where that emerges, and perhaps that emerges with Deni Avdija and with Toumani Camara, and they kind of step forward as they get there, right? Like perhaps that is the solution, right? But I don't think in and of itself, just by virtue of being 35, there is comfort with a reduced role and comfort with taking a back seat to young players and an acceptance that you are on the back half of your career, because these dudes are hyper competitive. And how the Blazers use them, how they deploy them, how they divvy up the minutes, particularly at the end of games, I think is something to monitor, because that is that's the balance. That's the challenge of this roster. It's not like a huge, massive deal that's going to upend the team, but I think it is now that this is what this group is going to look like, and the Jrue trade's been finalized, and it didn't expand to be a little bit different. This is their path, and this is what they've got to work with. Speaking of what they got to work with, 13 players and room under the tax line to make some additions. They have to add one player. What are they going to do? I will throw out some names. I'll give you two of Mike's guys in the third segment. Join me there, and we'll talk about the Blazers' financial situation now the Jrue Holiday trade is officially official. Join me there, won't ya? Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. And you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So the Blazers now, with 13 players on the roster, according to the indispensable website Spot Track from Keith Smith, have about $18 million in tax space. That is, they are an above the cap team, so they don't have cap space to sign players, but they are shy of the tax line. And you better bet they're not paying the tax this year for this particular roster. But quite frankly, they've got room to maneuver if they want to. They got to do something, right? They do need to carry 14 into the regular season. I assume they will. I don't think anyone on the Summer League team that is not currently under contract, and they only got two contract players in Young Hansen and Ryan Rupert as contract guys, and then a couple two-way guys in Sissoko and Love. But I don't think anyone on the Summer League roster is making the team. I think that's a long shot, and you got to use a little logic here about what they're kind of looking for in the back half of the roster. But if they wanted to, and they're not going to, obviously, because of how late it is into free agency, and the remaining free agents even available. It's if they wanted to, they could spend the entire non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is a contract that starts at about $14.1 million and escalates from there. It can be up to a 4-year deal if you want to use every stinking bit of it. They could use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception and sign someone, and then they would still have space under the tax line to add a 15th player if they want to carry 15. In my opinion, they should probably carry 15, but maybe just make the 15th guy a fully non-guaranteed deal that doesn't guarantee till January. So if you do need to okay, we need to make a move, you have some wiggle room to make trades should that happen. But they might just carry 14. They have space to do it, though, and the mechanism to do it being the mid-level exception, because, again, they can sign guys to minimum contracts because you get the minimum contract exception. They have the non-taxpayer mid-level, but, they're probably in the minimum zone at this point, this late in the year, unless they're going to, I don't know, make a run at Josh Giddey that he wouldn't accept because he wants more money than that or something. And also Giddey on this roster sounds like a nightmare. He just is not the skill set they need. Speaking of that, what are the skill sets they need? I think it's pretty clear that the rotation is full. In terms of rotational minutes, it seems to be pretty clearly spoken for. Scoot, Shaedon, Jrue Holiday at the guards. Deni Avdija, Toumani Camara, Jeremy Grant at the forwards. Some combination backing both of those gentlemen up or both those groups up of Matisse Thybulle, who's kind of like a 2-3, and Chris Murray, who's kind of like a 3-4. Ryan Rupert deep depth behind that. And then at center, Donovan Clingan, I would say, is your presumable day one starter with Young Hansen behind him. And Hansen, I assume, is ahead of Rob Williams just because I'm never, basically Rob's health over the last couple of years, I'm never going to pencil him in or put him in a pen to say oh yeah, he's for sure going to play and be available every night and play 27 minutes. It's just this unrealistic based on his availability and how the Blazers even used him last year when he was ostensibly healthy up until the All-Star break. Look how they even used him then. They were very, 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 very cautious with him. He's not going to play back-to-backs. He's not going to play. He's not going to play that much. They're straight up not going to play him that much. Based on how they used him last year, and then they didn't even freaking trade him. They felt they're being cautious with Rob so they can deal him, and they didn't even deal him. I think they're being cautious with his body because he's had so much health stuff. So I think it's Clingan, and then it's Hansen, and then it's Rob ? And then deep depth is Duop Reith. In my eyes, the Blazers need one position and then one glaring skill thing. They're just so light on shooting. If Shaedon Sharpe, a 30% career three-point shooter, takes a massive step forward, if Scoot Anderson takes a big step forward and although with consistency, because I think there were times and even stretches where Scoot shot well, but in terms of consistent, a full year of shooting the ball really well, then maybe some of the shooting is solved because Jrue is a career 37% three-point shooter, and I know he didn't shoot very well last year, but you assume, let's say he gets close to his career average. That's a league average shooter. Tumani shot it pretty well last year, but he's not a feared shooter. Denny, I think, kind of after a really rocky start, actually was pretty darn good as a shooter. But again, not a feared shooter. And then none of the bigs really shoot threes. Duop does, but he's just not going to play very much. They were 20th in offense last year, and I think they lost their best off the dribble three-point shooter. You're really just looking at Jeremy Grant. It's Jeremy, get back up to 40% from three and remember how to make twos and save this team. But they're really light on shooting. They could use another shooter. My idea, these are Mike's guys. We're getting to the Mike's guys. Let me actually talk about both. I'll give you Mike's guys at the very end. That's why you stick around for another 3 minutes to close the show. So in addition to shooting, they're just really light on shooting. I think they need another emergency guard, right? Delano Banton is a free agent. They let him go. He wasn't really a point guard either. He was a score guard. Peak skill in the league. His field goal attempts, they're kind of missing that maybe a little bit. But I think they need you're not going to play most of the time, but when somebody gets hurt or when someone has the flu and is out for a few games, competent, not going to turn the ball over, not going to screw up type of veteran point guard depth. Knowing the Blazers, the two names I'm about to say, they're just not going to choose these people. They're going to choose guys who were they heavily scouted in high school and have been professionals in Europe or whatever, or second draft guys, Bones Highland or something like that, right? He's at this point, he's probably a fourth draft guy based on how much he's bounced around. But it is not going to be, they're not going to choose these two names. But my two names, Mike's guys, to close the show, is if I had to pick a sort of wingy shooter who could play, it would be Amir Coffey. I like Coffey a lot. I thought he was really useful on the Clippers last year. Yeah, he's older. He's just turned 28. He's played in the league a while, but I thought he was just straight up good on the Clippers last year. A career 38.4% shooter, shot a 40.9% on 3.4 attempts per game. Basically his career high. His second season he shot a little bit better, but just on about a third of the number of attempts. So in terms of volume and accuracy, the best three-point shooting season of his career. Amir, he's big enough at 6'7" to play 2-3 and a little bit of 4-ish if you're playing a wingy, switchy defense and not super worried about rebounds. And the Blazers are a pretty bad rebounding team all of last season, so maybe they won't be. I really like him. He's just absolutely not the type of player they were at. And quite frankly, because there's not a clear path to playing time, I'm not sure Amir Coffey would be interested in joining the Blazers. But in terms of Mike's guys, give me Amir Coffey. And then the other Mike's guy for the sort of veteran backup point guard position would be Monty Morris. It's the Blazers are going to sign Brandon Williams or the equivalent of that, right? they're going to sign that's like the player they're going to go after. But Monty Morris is my guy, dude. He doesn't turn the ball over. In various, early in his career in Denver, I was just a big Monty Morris believer. He also got 6 Man of the Year votes his second season, the first season that he really played in Denver, back way back when I was still at the paper in 2018-19 season. But his skills have diminished a great deal since then. But still, again, a career 39% 3-point shooter. It's on really low volume, but he has an incredible nickname, the Count of Monty Assist-TO, because he had the great assist-to-turnover ratio. He's just the kind of deep bench guard who's not going to play very much, and when he does play, he's not going to be very spectacular. He's not going to be very useful. He wasn't very good on the Suns last year, but he is the get him in line, don't screw it up type of vet point guard that I think can be useful at the end of the bench. These are not names the Blazers are going to be interested in, because what they're going to do is they're going to take upside swings for the back half of the roster, because that's kind of what they do. They just they use these spots, and I don't really fault them for that. I think that's probably what they always should be doing, is at all times be throwing darts, because they just need to hit a bullseye at some point. But for Mike's guys, Amir Coffey and Monty Morris would be Monty Morris and Amir Coffey would be my guys. That is going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow's show. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. If you're listening to a July 8th podcast about the Portland Trail Blazers and you made it to this part of the podcast legally, you need to tell one friend about the show and then come back for tomorrow's program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.